welcome to our very exciting day. My name is Lorraine Salmon. I'm the Executive Director of the Foundation here at SUNY Ulster, and welcome to the Reuner Library Writers Series. And that's it. That's my announcements, except I'd love to welcome the fabulous Anita Williams-Peck, who is our board chair, and giving us a little wave up here in the front. It's through the fabulous fundraising of our foundation board that we're able to bring to you exciting events like today's. And without further ado, I'd like to bring to the podium Dolores Quiles, Professor of English.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Today I have the pleasure of introducing Bruce Littlefield, writer. So many things, as it says here. People have called Bruce Littlefield a lot of things. Well, I call him a great teacher, a great writer, and I had the pleasure this morning to work with him as a student with my other students in a workshop. And after teaching here 25 years, you think I know enough? Well, I learned more, and I really appreciate that. So thank you, Bruce. I just want to let you know that he's written many books and published many books. He's been on many shows and newspapers and magazines. I had the pleasure of meeting him many years ago when he came to Rosendale and opened up the cement factory. The cement company, which I was teasing Bruce about and saying, hopefully those rolls are not cement rolls, and they weren't. It was fabulous. And also the Alamo, food worth fighting for, if I remember correctly. And it was a lot of fun. And so I'm not going to speak anymore because I'm going to let Bruce and Goretti take over, and I know you're going to enjoy this reading. So welcome, everyone.
Make sure I got everything set up here. It looks all good. Thank you for that nice introduction, Dolores. Aren't introductions fun? They tell you what you've done, but they don't tell you what you're going to do. Let me tell you what I'm going to do today. I thought I would talk to you a little bit about my experience in writing, and I thought I would help you today find out what your story is yourself. Because, believe it or not, everybody here has a story. I got to walk over here in order to see this side of the room. And I'm going to help you sort of figure out what it is that you have to present to the world. To put it in a language that you can understand, it's probably best said is, like, what's your hashtag? What is your hashtag? In this world of social media, we are bombarded. Every single day, you are trying to find your story. Even if you don't think you're trying to find a story, you're photographing your mascara that fell down your toilet, and you're posting that online. You are actually telling a story about yourself, about your life. I've written, I think I'm up to 17 books, a lot of books, and people ask me, like, what do you write about? Well, the truth is that I've written about things that interest me. I've written about famous people, I've written about interesting places, and I've written about very cool things. I've written also about myself and about my life and about what I'm feeling and what I'm hearing and what I'm thinking. And that's a little bit about what I want to talk to you about today, is about who you are, what you're feeling and what you're thinking. And you know, everybody has a story. You might think yours is average. And what I want to tell you today is that your story might be average to you, but if you tell it to somebody else, they might find it fascinating. You know, not everybody has tragedy in their life. Fortunately, knock on wood, I've been pretty blessed in my life. They actually tried to get that woman who's she saved her dog but got eaten by that alligator, remember? She wasn't available to come today, and so they asked me. But I haven't had any real tragedies, but as you're going to find out, I have a couple of stories to tell. Now, you remember Mr. Rogers. Does everybody remember Mr. Rogers? That guy? You remember his song, would you be mine, could you be mine, won't you be my neighbor? Well, he had this great quote, you can see it there, and I agree, there isn't anyone you couldn't learn to love once you heard their story. What does that mean to me? Well, as I've gone through and worked on my books over the years, I have realized that if you actually take the time to talk to someone, anyone, you can find not just that you have something to understand about them, but you'll find something fascinating about them. This morning in our workshop, we had 16 students, and I was riveted by the things that we learned from each of them just by asking a few simple questions. And if we can all sort of learn to listen to each other a little more, in these crazy times we are living in, that's my one political statement that I will make today. In these very crazy times, if we can learn to listen to each other a little more, I think we'll all be a little better off. Now, my object today is to sort of help you realize that you do have a story, and I thought that it would help you find yours if I shared a little about mine. So I'm going to tell you about the first time I lied, I stole, and I cheated. Yes, I have done all of those things, and it was in first grade that I learned a very important life issue. Thou shalt not lie, because if thou shalt lie, thou shalt get caught. It's inevitable. Now, I learned this very quickly in first grade, thanks to a girl named Stephanie Jones. She was a pretty little girl, pretty on the outside, pretty ugly on the inside. She had this run, and this sort of tells you about her. She was like, run like this. And it was like a karate chop kind of run, which I later tried to duplicate in fifth grade, but Frank Shaw called me a sissy, and I never did that again. But it was a troubling time with Stephanie. Did I go back on this accidentally? Sorry, everybody. There we go. Oh, no, don't get ahead of myself. Lord, you almost saw the ending. Anyway, I learned very quickly because of Stephanie. She, this unsweet girl, she, by the way, had pigtails down to her waist and evil down to the bottom of her feet, but she wanted me to be her first kiss. And in order to accomplish this goal, she was chasing me around the red dirt playground of Congaree Elementary School in Congaree, South Carolina. There were some woods at the edge of the school playground, and I thought they would be good cover for me, so I ran for them. Gnarly pines, I'm running in and out of the pines, trying to get away from this girl, and lo and behold, she corners me between the trees and the fence. She puckers up. I duck, I dodge, I turn, and I got far enough ahead of her that I was able to pick up a rock, and I chucked it at her. With the amazing throw I had then, it's a wonder I wasn't a better baseball player. But it was the only time I ever hit a target, and I hit her directly in the face. You would have thought I was A-Rod. And what does this girl do? She did what any other evil girl would do. She started bleeding and crying loudly. And she grabbed the attention of the playground monitor, who promptly grabbed me and toted me off to the principal's office. Now, it's not an always exciting thing to be taken to the principal's office, especially when your mother taught third grade in the school. But you get to the principal's office, and you know you're at the principal's office because it says it on the door. Principal, principal. They took me in, they set me down. It was a green vinyl chair with little small wooden arms, and I sat staring at Principal Roberts. And Principal Roberts says to me, Bruce, did you hit Stephanie Jones over the head with a rock? I said, He said, well, she's bleeding. And then here it comes. Here comes the big lie. Here it comes. Here it comes. I scratched her with my fingernail. Let me see your nails. I bit my nails as a child, badly, down to the quick. It was quickly that Principal Roberts found out I was a lion. I had hit Stephanie Jones with a rock. I can tell you that afternoon that our ride back to our trailer park where we lived was not so pleasant. I had months thereafter of no playground, no TV, no G.I. Joe. It was no Laverne and Shirley. It was a lot of no. And I quickly learned, and any time in the future that I thought about lying, I thought of Stephanie Jones coming at me. And I thought, that's not going to go anywhere, so you better calm it down, Littlefield, calm it down. And by the way, I should have, come up with a better lie, because finding a nail on my hand would be sort of like finding a nun wearing a bikini. You just don't see that very often, and it just doesn't happen. Okay, well, it happens sometimes, but anyway, they caught me. I was done. Now, I also want to tell you that shortly thereafter, we moved from our trailer park into a new area where I would go to a new school. I'm not sure if the two events were related or not, but we did move to a neighborhood called Oak Grove on a street called Spring Hills Drive in a town called Lexington. It was while living there that some exciting things began to happen. We moved next door to the Guns. The Guns had 3 daughters, Katrina, Brecca, and Tarragon. Tarragon? This is before the Food Network, and I guess they only knew salt and pepper, but Tarragon is still a friend of mine, and I'm sure she's spicy. Anyway, the Guns also were breeders of Afghan hounds. Does anybody know what an Afghan is? I think they're known as does anybody have them before I say this? Okay. They're known as the dumbest dog. Well, they're also the smelliest dog, and we will talk about the smell living next door to the Guns that I can still smell for years later. We'll talk about that another day. But anyway, living in that little neighborhood inspired one of my books. And you're like, oh, how did that inspire one of your books? Well, this is what I'm getting to, that a small, simple story can inspire us all. Has anybody heard of a travel trailer called the Airstream trailer? They're like a recreational vehicle. They were very famous in the 20th century as a design marvel. Well, I wrote a book about it. And I thought I would read you a little excerpt from that book so you can see how a little story from childhood can come to life later on. There was an Airstream behind the Simmons house when I was growing up. It was the most unique thing about my small town South Carolina neighborhood, sleek, shiny, and silver. And anytime I had friends over, I'd take the opportunity to show off the spaceship that had landed in the Simmons backyard. Every Friday night of summer, Mr. and Mrs. Simmons would pack their yippy toy poodle, Precious, a couple of bags of groceries from the Piggly Wiggly, and 2 removable lounge chairs into their wood panel board station wagon and tow their silver ship to a campground at Lake Murray. With all the preparation for and hoopla surrounding this weekly departure, you would think that they were pioneers leaving for the unknown. Lake Murray, where they were headed, was 3.5 miles away. Every Sunday afternoon, as sure as church, they would come back into the neighborhood. And we kids would stop whatever we were doing and run so that we could wave at them as their Airstream passed, because as their Airstream passed, you could see the reflection of yourself in it. And as we stood in front of our cookie-cutter houses, Mr. Simmons didn't ever acknowledge us. His attention was always on the mathematical angle he could calculate to position his Ford so that he could back his huge land yacht fresh from Lake Murray up their driveway and into their backyard. He would drive a little past his mailbox towards the cul-de-sac on an angle and then flip the Ford in reverse, maneuvering their weekend house strategically up the driveway, through the gates of their chain link fence, and into its work week spot in their backyard. I'm not sure what they did while they were at Lake Murray, but my young mind's fantasy was that they were always meeting with other space aliens and planning their time they were going back out into space. The summer after Mr. Simmons died of a heart attack, David Ruff and I decided, in a moment of fourth grade mischief, to sneak inside that Airstream and check it out. I was amazed. It had a tiny tub, a little toilet, spacious bed, and then, while I examined the interior of the miniature refrigerator, David squealed from the sofa, "Mrs. Simmons!" I bumped my head up on the top of the refrigerator and stumbled backwards. I'm sure what Mrs. Simmons saw was a trailer rocking like a storm-tossed boat as both David and I scurried about inside trying to find the perfect spot to hide. One thing I learned that day is that just about every square inch of an Airstream is used for something. There just aren't a lot of hiding spaces. Mrs. Simmons found me in the tiny tub covered beneath a couple of terry cloth towels, and David was easily spotted as the awkward lump behind the pile of sofa cushions. Fortunately, Mrs. Simmons smiled upon us that day, she perhaps realizing someone should enjoy her Airstream now that her husband had passed away. She told us that we could make our Airstream our clubhouse for the summer, as long as we agreed to wash it a couple of times. Oh, the summer of '78. David and I must have washed and polished Mrs. Simmons' Airstream 30 times, but I learned how to play poker. Mrs. Simmons taught David and me around the flip-up Formica top table. We ate a lot of Kraft macaroni and cheese. Mrs. Simmons thought she was a virtual Julia Child in that little galley kitchen. And I kissed Paula Shull during a virginal game of Spin the Bottle. Mrs. Simmons had garden club on Thursday nights. The next summer, Mrs. Simmons sold her house, loaded up the Ford. She, Precious, and our Silver Clubhouse moved to live near her daughter in Hollywood, Florida, and Paula Shull dumped me for Pate Cox. There's something else that dramatic that happened in Hill Springs Drive that might rock some of you to the very core. It led me to becoming a criminal, a thief. It all started at the Guns house. Pretty Lisa from down the street was babysitting the Gun girls, and I was over visiting. And let me just say that Lisa's older boyfriend was over visiting too, and Lisa was much more interested in her boyfriend than she was in babysitting us. In fact, she and her boyfriend had locked themselves in the Guns' parents' bedroom. But fortunately, Katrina knew how to pick the lock with a bobby pin. You can see where this story is going. We all gathered outside the bedroom door. We each put our ear up to the door. 7-year-old Tara Gunn, Brecca, 9, 11-year-old me, and 13-year-old Katrina. Now, what we heard coming from that bedroom was something I hadn't heard before. It was an unusual sound, something strangely suspicious, yet gleeful. Something was going on behind that door. Katrina did her magic and we fell into the room, and all I can tell you, all that can be described is the 11-year-old face was jaw-dropping. We all looked like this. Ah! Every one of us but Lisa's boyfriend. He looked like this. He put on his jeans and left, leaving us traumatized and the neighborhood amok. It was a scandal of all scandals, except for the Rickenbacker divorce, but that's a whole nother story. Anyway, Lisa had a dad that was in the military, and they moved shortly thereafter. I'm not sure if the two were related, but we were left wondering what we had seen. Let's just say I was curious about it. What I had witnessed at the gun house was unusual, and I wanted to know more. These are, by the way, the days before the internet. We still had the phone on the wall that you tried to stretch with the cord to go in the other room. Without an internet, my friends who are younger than me, let me just tell you that education was hard to come by. But that film strip of Lisa and her boyfriend kept running over and over in my mind, and during the summer of my 6th grade year, I decided to make it a full-blown movie. Get ready. I was at my grandparents' house in a smaller town called Innery, a little mill town. It's almost as big as my pinky. Everybody knew everybody. There were no traffic lights, but there was one 7-Eleven. Now, what do 7-Elevens carry? They carry candy, they do ices, they have cigarettes. This one had gas and magazines. All types of magazines. So I went to the 7-Eleven and I stalked it out. This was premeditated thievery, I'm confessing to, okay? The magazines were along the back wall. There were 3 rows of them. I can remember it as if it were yesterday. With the sexiest magazines, the sexy ones, on top, hidden behind these little modesty panels to cover their racy fronts. There was a store register up near the front, a gas station, the gas pump outside. There was a man that worked the front counter register, and anytime somebody came in, you'd hear the ding of the bell. The man would become interested in them because he had to take their money. I saw the whole thing. The plan was I was going to buy a magazine with my allowance money. But the magazine I was going to buy was going to conceal the magazine I really wanted. But I couldn't buy because I was 12. That was the sexy magazine with Lisa and her boyfriend doing something naughty on the inside. So, National Enquirer, naughty magazine, counter, cash, out the door. Okay. After my grandmother left for work, I went to the 7-Eleven and cased the joint again at 9:30. Went back an hour later, walked the aisles, perused the magazines, my eyes doing backflips over my shoulder, watched the movements of the clerk guy. Gas station, pump goes off, ding, door opens, clerk talks to pumper, I make my move. And I head to the counter. "One National Enquirer, please," I said to him, my lips, I'm sure, white. I hand over my money and I walk out. My heart, boom, 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 boom. I run to my grandmother's house. And what I saw in that magazine changed my life forever. It also made me feel very guilty. So, after I got my eye full, I took the magazine into the backyard, past the pecan trees, all the way to the railroad tracks, where my grandmother had her burn pile. I put the magazine down, I took a match, I lit it, skin burning, pine straw, a little extra help, gone, ashes. Before my grandparents got home, I had seen what I came to see. The next day, I woke up thinking, why did I burn that magazine? Why did I? So, what do you think I did? I went back to the store to try the routine again. I wanted myself a new magazine. I go in, I do my routine, I do the magazine, I go to the counter, I put the thing on the counter, and the man behind the counter goes, son, I let you get away with that yesterday. And unless you want me to embarrass you and call you grandmother, you better walk out this store right now. That was the last time that I stole anything was the day before that moment. But that film strip plays over and over and over again in my mind. Now, I say that to you to say there are things that you've done and things that have happened to you that play over and over again in your mind. And probably those are good stories. That's good storytelling. It's pretty interesting, the things you've done, the experiences you've had, the lies I've told, the magazine I've stolen. But wait, there's more. 10th grade, English teacher, Dr. Elizabeth Hart. Both Dr. Hart and her husband, Mr. Hart, taught in our high school. Dr. Hart taught honors English, Mr. Hart taught honors algebra. Dr. Hart was an interesting woman. She was, as they say, handsome, bigger than life, with a voice that boomed like a megaphoned Maya Angelou. On the first day of class, there was foreshadowing of a dramatic year when she told us of her growing up as a young black woman in rural South Carolina, and how when she graduated from college and was offered her first teaching contract, she got the contract from her, was handed her contract, and the person wrote, "Sign here" with an X. And Dr. Hart said, "I don't sign by an X. I know how to write my name," ripped up the contract and threw it on the floor. Dr. Hart, if you're getting my drift, was a formidable woman. I sat in my seat that first day going, I'm scared. What a semester this is going to be. And I also felt sorry for Mr. Hart, by the way. But I should also say she was brilliant, absolutely brilliant woman, and very dramatic. She did this reading for us of that in that first week of The Telltale Heart. I've never seen anything like it, and I hope to never see anything again. But basically, the closet that she was using as a prop wouldn't open when she was doing the famous, "I turned the latch of the door and opened it oh so gently. I turned the latch of the door and opened it oh so..." Girl never got that thing open, but we acted as though she did, and that her performance was Meryl Streep. When she finished and got to, "It's under the floor, it's under the floor," we all applauded, so excited. Oh, she's so amazing. Oh, God, oh, amazing. So when I tell you this, I say get ready for what's coming, because you get the picture. She gonna be mean. Brings me to my last little story for you, the story of my first big English test, Dr. Hart's class. I will tell you and pat myself on the back that I was in 10th grade and I was in an 11th grade class. So I felt some pressure, but the test itself was going to be quite difficult. Like, it had questions on it like, why is Herman Melville's novel Moby Dick an allegory? And some of the movements that took place in the modernist period were what? Things that if I'm being honest, I still don't know the answer to. Anyway, it was high pressure and a lot of information. And I decided that I'd do something unusual. I'd cheat. I hadn't cheated before, but I got the picture of how you do it. I took this tiny, skinny piece of paper, and in teensy-weensy pencil, I wrote all the answers from everything from allegory to zeugma. And by the way, zeugma, that's a figure of speech when you use a verb with more than one clause in a sentence. So like that's to say, to wage war and peace. Or on his fishing trip, John caught 3 fish and a cold. That's a zeugma. You'll never use it again. Anywho, there I sit at my desk on the Friday test, and I'm doing my little test. I'm doing it, and I'm looking at my sheet. I'm doing it, I'm looking at my sheet. I'm doing it. And I didn't notice anything, and all of a sudden you can feel that the whole classroom has gone still. And then the voice, "Bruce, what are you doing?" I looked up and there was Dr. Hart, and girl was not happy. I said, "I'm taking the test." And she said, "It appears to me that you are cheating." I said, "Oh, we can't use notes." That's all I could think of. What do you say? So what did she do? She took my test. I gotta put down the mic for this. This is so dramatic. She walked to the front of the classroom and she goes, "Cheetah! Cheetah! Cheetah!" Okay? That's Friday. There's a sad part to this story, even sadder than me sitting there, was that on Monday, Dr. Hart didn't show up to class. On Tuesday, she didn't show up to class. On Wednesday, she didn't show up to class. On Thursday, we found out Dr. Hart was in the hospital. She had cancer. Dr. Hart never, sorry, goddess. Dr. Hart did not make it back to class. She died. But there's a happy ending for me. The substitute teacher, she came, Mrs. Myers. She was looking at all the tests and she said, "Bruce, could you stay after class?" Okay. She's like, I was going through all the tests, and it seems to me that there wasn't one from you. I said, remembering Stephanie Jones. Oh, I got all my notes there. Oh, what happened here? Stephanie Jones, there we go. Is that it? Yeah, almost. There we go. I said, "I have to tell you, I can't lie. I cheated. But I think Dr. Hart wanted me to have a second chance." I got an A. Now, what can you learn from my story? These 3 simple stories I've shared with you, besides don't lie, don't steal, and don't cheat. Well, remember when I told you in the beginning that I haven't had any real tragedies in my life? I have all my limbs, I'm pretty healthy, I'm pretty well fed, I haven't been imprisoned. Well, realize that my childhood experience with that Airstream trailer turned into a book, right? Had I ever owned an Airstream trailer at that point? No, but it became a book. And so here's some big news for you. In each of my books, I've banked on, that means made money on, banked on the simplest of stories from my life, okay? So my Garage Sale America book, based on the fact that my grandmother would take me out on Saturday mornings, give me a couple of quarters, say, look around, buy yourself something while I find out the town gossip. My Christmas book, I was always fascinated with Christmas decorating. I was always the kid who wanted to decorate his house big and win the neighborhood decorating contest. I never won, but I got to travel the country and talk to all the Clark Griswolds out there. My dog book, I figured out that I could write a book for my dog, get paid for it, and spend time with my dog, enjoy it. So how does that help you? What does that tell you about your story? Well, Mark Twain said this great quote I love, and it's basically that there's two most important days in your life. The day you were born and the day you figure out why. I'm here to tell you that what's happened to you in your life, all the myriad of things, from the most boring, getting gum stuck on your shoe in the mall and embarrassing yourself by picking your nose and getting caught, all of those things are what makes you you, makes you special. Even though you, at the time, might feel so average in that moment. So if I were going around the room today and I were asking you questions, we did this tell me about your first tattoo. How did you find out your parents were getting a divorce? Who caught you picking your nose? When was your first kiss? Or why haven't you had it yet? Think about these things that have happened to you, these memories, and that's your story. That's why you're here. And sharing that story is what's most important in your life, whether it's sharing it publicly, as I just did today, or whether it's sharing it just with the one you love. So, tell me about the speeding ticket you got today. How'd you arrive here today? Who bought the clothes you're wearing? What'd you cook last night and it didn't turn out so well? That's what you write. That's your story. Now, I know a lot of you are wondering, but I can't really write that well, and there's 5 simple rules that Bruce has for writing. You've heard them all today. You didn't know you were hearing them, but I'm going to tell you them now. Here's how you write your story, my 5 rules. Number 1, how many of you have a notebook? I keep a notebook. I've carried it since high school. Not the same notebook. I've got a lot of notebooks. I have a closet filled with notebooks, cataloged, noted. But carrying a notebook gives you power. Why? First, it puts your thoughts in order, helps you keep your things organized, and anytime you have a good thought, it gives you a place to write it down. The second thing is, it's not like high pressure, like keeping a diary. You don't feel like, dear diary, I've got to tell you what happened in my day. It was such a wonderful day. Johnny gave me, no. It's just something brilliant someone said. For example, this wonderful gentleman in my earlier seminar today, I wrote it down so I could remember it, said about social media that he's not on social media anymore, and I said, why? And he said, I'm sick of seeing everyone's great day on my average day. Right? But I wrote it down, I will not forget it, and I will share it with a lot of people. Lastly, by the way, my Christmas book came out of something that I wrote in my notebook. I wrote down, America is filled with people aspiring to be Clark Griswold. And then my Christmas book was born, right? So the other thing about the notebook that I want you all to know, and if you could just understand this, it's just the simplest of things. people want to know what you're writing down, so you're interesting. When you have a notebook, people are interested. What'd you just write down? What did I say? What'd you write down? And believe me, I've gotten business cards, job referrals, and jobs from having my notebook, okay? But nothing flatters anyone more than you taking down their words. Nothing. It validates that they said something important. Number 2, do not feel the need to write in big words or long sentences. Zeugma was the biggest word I've used today, and I told you nobody needs to know about that word, okay? And the longest sentence I said maybe has a dozen or so words. Don't feel the pressure to write big or long. Number 3, use correct grammar. Fortunately, when you get to the book stage, there's copy editors who help you with things like that. But use an active voice. And I'll tell you, I mean, you'll learn in your English classes the grammar, but, oh, I skipped ahead, didn't I? Yep, sorry. We're coming to use correct grammar and active voice. Active voice is Barry hit the ball, not the ball was hit by Barry, okay? Oh, back to number 3, sorry. Don't go into great detail about places and things. What do I mean by that? When I said the principal's office, Principal, had a black and a green chair with skinny wood arms, that told you everything you needed to know about that scene. You didn't need to go into his bookshelf and what he was wearing. And oh, I will tell you that he did have cotton candy blonde hair, and it was sort of this comb over to the side. No more politics, sorry. Anyway, and number 4, that's number 4. Number 5, you just have to do it. You have to do it. There are people who talk and people who do. Don't just talk about it. Write it. I want to know. And if, by the way, you decide you don't want to write it, you don't want to do anything, do something well. Even if it's sitting home knitting your scarf, make the best damn scarf this side of the Hudson River, and then look me up, because I want to know about it. Tell me about it. Thank you. Somehow I'm supposed to sit over there, but I don't know how to turn it off. I bet if I do that. Oh, good. Okay. Hi, Goretti.
Hi. Hang on, I gotta figure out. It's on. Hello, okay. How are you? For those of you who don't know me, I'm Professor Goretti Benka in the English department here at SUNY Ulster, so welcome. It's such a privilege to be here with you today and to be working with you to prepare for this. Amazing, thank you so much.
Why, thank you.
I rarely would ever correct one of our guests here at SUNY Ulster, but...
See, I need a copy editor. I'm sure so.
No. If my English 102 students are here, you do need to know Zeugma next week. Just saying. Then maybe you will never use it again. Sorry. They have a test next week.
No, okay, good.
Okay.
Allegory.
All right. Well, that was last week's test. It's okay. So, Bruce, did you always want to be a writer?
No. I did not always want to be a writer. I was actually, I think you run away from what you're good at. I ran away from writing. Writing scared me. You get in trouble a lot when you write, because you're either writing something like about yourself that's exposing, or you're writing something about your parents that's exposing, or your neighbors, or, you know. And so I didn't always want to be a writer, but I knew that I could write. I did okay writing.
So how did you get here? How did you get from running away from it to running to it?
Well, how I ended up in New York was that I came up to be an actor model. Didn't work out so well, and I ended up going back to grad school to get my master's in journalism. And then, so I started becoming a journalist and realized, hey, I can write. And so I started writing, and then I wrote, I researched a book on Hillary Clinton. It was the first biography of Hillary Clinton for Vanity Fair magazine. And then it turned into a book.
Oh, Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have a process? Do you have a routine when you write?
It's funny, in the seminar this morning, I make up my bed every morning. That's a start. And as the good thing about being a writer is that you can wear pretty much whatever you want. And I do put on clothes.
That's
and
good
then
to know.
I try to, I sort of have a routine that I get up in the morning, I make my bed, I have my coffee, I return emails, pretend that I'm writing a little bit, and then I go to the gym for a little while, and then I basically do everything I can to distract myself and not write, but then I come home and sit down in front of the computer and write.
Nice, nice.
And then I do that for a little while, and I get up because I'm an antsy person, so I don't sit very long anywhere, so I write a little bit, and I go and tend to something and come back to it.
Awesome. So how did publishing your first work change your writing process, or did it enhance it?
Well, actually, I worked with a woman who had done books prior. Her name is Gail Sheehy. She wrote this book in the 70s called Passages, and Gail had a very, I'm very grateful to her for learning this, but a very wonderful organizational process, which at that time mostly was kept in file cabinets. But she would begin, and we began to lay out the book in files. And so, you would mark each file with a topic, like Hillary's wardrobe, Hillary's emails. And then anything that related to that topic, you stick in the file. And Monica Lewinsky. And then, anyway, you fill those files, and then slowly those files begin to thicken, and then you have plenty of material in there that you can quickly look at and say, okay, I'm going to write about Monica today, and what do I know about her? And then so you sort of go through that. So I'm mostly a nonfiction book writer, which means I tell the truth. But I write about things that are real, and so generally, and especially with the internet, you can find out a great deal of information. Not about Lisa and her boyfriend, but you can find out a lot of things, and then you sort of ingest all of that, digest all of that, and then sort of write from there.
So it's a lot of organization, keeping yourself
Organization
organized.
is the key. I think
Yeah.
that's like one of my. I bet you would agree with that, Kim. Yeah, organization is pivotal.
Yeah. So make your bed, stay organized.
Yeah, yeah.
Got that.
The making the bed thing. How many people made their bed this morning? Okay, I'd say that's about 40%. Good job, 40.
That's awesome. If you could go back and talk to that first grade, fourth grade, sixth grade self, what advice would you give yourself then that you think would help your writing career now?
Don't throw out all those love letters. Keep every diary. Anything that you've written, felt, thought, hang on to that. My mother threw out this bag. It was this blue bag that I made like in Boy Scout camp, but it was this blue fabric, and it had a little drawstring top, and it had, back in the day, instead of texting, we used to send notes. You pass a note back, and so I had, I'd say, 400 of those, which, can you just imagine what was in there? Oh. But anyway, she threw that away, so save all your written material.
Yeah. Now that everything's digital. It's
Yeah,
so
in
much
digital,
so
it's much easier. It's much easier.
Yeah. What's the hardest thing about writing for you?
Writing.
The doing it?
Like staring at a blank page and figuring out what you're going to say. It's daunting because you are ultimately creating something from nothing, and so that's scary. And some days it goes great, and other days you're like, oh my gosh, what a horrible writer I am. But I was saying today too that I spend a lot of time on my first line, like even breaking it down to first line of the book, and then first line of the first chapter, and then first line of the second chapter, and figuring out what that is, because if you can figure out the first line, a lot can sort of hang and come off of that.
A lot of our students struggle or complain about how long it takes them to write, a paper, an essay. I know a lot of my students talk to me about that a lot. So for you, writing a book, how long does it usually take you to write a whole book?
Well, I always tell people that if you did a page a day, you would have a book in a year. If you're diligent about a page a day. I mean, it won't be the best book necessarily because you have to go back and do rewrites, but you would have the material to do a book. I can do a book in about a year's time. I have done books that I've crashed, and I've done those in less than 3 months. You can do as much work or work much faster when there's a gun to your head, and the gun is the word called deadline. And once you have a deadline, you are sort of held to it.
Right.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to students? What's your writing trick that you would want to share with our students?
Oh, that's a good question. So my writing trick, what I do is I like to distract myself. Sounds so crazy, right? But I give myself a lot of things, other things that are going on around me, or to do, or a schedule, such that I basically have to write. When I have that second to write, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, just as you're getting ready, you're supposed to be at the dinner party at 7:30, you have your greatest idea at 7:17. Like, oh God, if I can get this paragraph out really quickly, but I give myself things that make me my time limited and feel the pressure. I like to feel the pressure and the stress of the. God, I sound sick, don't I? What a sicko! But it's true. That's how I do it. That's the trick.
That's awesome, though. So, if you weren't a writer today, what would you be doing?
Ooh.
Uh-oh.
You mean what I would want to be doing? I'd be gardening.
All right.
I'd be gardening.
You have an amazing garden, by the way.
Oh, well,
I've been to the house, and
Thank
it's
you. And that's, by the way, how I distract myself an awful lot. Tend to the garden. Yeah, but career-wise, how would I have made it? Not as a singer, that's for sure. I could have been, maybe I would have gone into veterinary medicine, or I love animals, so I probably would have done something along those lines, or maybe an animal psychologist or psychiatrist. I'm sure I could make a lot of money doing that. Actually, that sounds like a pretty good plan.
Yeah, see, there you go. I think there is one.
There is one.
There isn't. Well, there is somebody,
listen,
right?
I went to an animal psychic one time.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, there you go.
Didn't work out so well.
Oh. What scares you about writing?
Writing, staring at that blank page. I think not being good. And I also mean that in not being good as the human sense too, like not being good. Yeah.
That's so important. I think it's important for all of us to hear other people say that sometimes, right? Because I think all of us have that feeling, but we never want to express it. And to hear somebody else
I think
say
that's
that
a very,
is amazing.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
it's hard to say. Oof. But, I mean, we all have that fear, no matter what you do in your life. I mean, you definitely want to be good. You don't want to be bad at it. Though there are some people, now that I think of it. But you definitely want to be good. And when I say I want to be a good person, I've written some things at times that, have hurt people's feelings, or have, you describe somebody and they wanted to be described as, Charlize Theron, and they're more like Rosie O'Donnell, and, it's like, I don't know, you want to be good in every sense of that word.
Awesome. I know that some of our students have expressed wanting to be writers and be professional writers, and not necessarily fiction writers, but nonfiction writers like yourself. How did you go about getting an agent? How did you get started?
That's like the world's hardest question to answer because it's like the catch-22, like you can't get a book deal without an agent, you can't get an agent without a book deal, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. And basically it comes down to hard work and diligence. I've said this before earlier today, but I have a notebook with more than 200, I stopped at 200 because it was so annoying, but I have more than 200 rejection letters, people telling me no, like you're stink. And that's hard when you get that in the mail, and the little manila envelope, it comes from the agents, and it says, you're not the right fit for us. It's like not getting picked for the baseball team. So that is, you have to deal with the rejection, is the bottom line. And that's how you end up getting an agent, is that you're tough enough that you just keep going. And I said this, but think about your life. You have so many no's. So many no's. No matter what you do, very few yeses. Very few yeses. Realize I've had that book of 200 no's. I've only had 17 yeses. 17, that's it. And you've got to be able to take the no in order to stand back and be ready for the yes. So, and then logistically how you do it is you send out manuscript after manuscript after manuscript to agents, and then one day hope that one will take a lunch. You go and talk to them, you say, here's my other ideas, or you ask a friend who's in the business, hey, can I talk to your agent, or can you submit this manuscript for me? You just have to do the work. Yeah, it's hard.
So, Bruce, I've got a thing.
I'll hook you
Yeah?
up.
Okay,
I'll hook
thanks.
you
All right. Holy joke.
I
teach
don't worry, you're ready.
So you talked earlier about wanting to be a good person, and that sometimes when you write, you have to write hard things. Have you regretted anything that you've ever written?
Yeah, I have. I did one book that I got sued for, and for $60 million. Try getting that in the mail. Actually, it's handed to you. You're served. Yeah, so I regretted doing that book just because I didn't it just felt dirty. Like it was dirty. It was it was on the front of every magazine. But fortunately I ghost wrote that, so I didn't have to take the, long-term effects of it, I guess. But yeah, I regretted doing that. And I didn't regret it for the topic, because the topic, everything that we did in the book was true. It was just, that old saying, when you lie down with dogs, you get up with fleas. Well, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's sort of, and it happens. But I won't ever do another one.
When we were talking earlier, you had said to me, and I want to get this right, so I'm going to read it, but you had said that you view social media as a diary, an ongoing biography we publish daily.
Yep.
That was really intriguing that you said that. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I had realized something. I was doing a book with Frederick Eklund. Many of you might know him from $1 Million Listing on Bravo. He and I did a book called The Secrets of Selling Anything to Anyone. And I realized in writing that book, while I was writing that book, that, Frederick has an amazing social media presence, and I realized, what an amazing diary he has. When he's like 85 years old and sitting in his nursing home, he is going to really be able to look back and see some fascinating things. And even if it's just a picture, and you guys are all privileged now that somebody else is keeping it for you. You don't even have to hide it from your mother. It's already out there everywhere. And it's that somebody else is logging all of that material for you, and your mother's not going to throw it away when you move out to go to college. It's still going to be there. And each day, most of us have posted something or taken, even if you're not posting it, you're on your phone, you have it. And you look back and you just look at the photos. You've got a chronology of your life, an amazing diary. And if I were sitting down with any of you to write your book, I'd say, let's look back through your photos, and you can sort of see your biography running by you.
So we're writing every day.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. we're almost out of time, and so I want to ask you one last question, and I hope that you can maybe impart some wisdom on all of us.
Okay.
Right? So how do you see writing influencing the world around us? You know, what advice can you give our students, future writers, and how can they influence change in their world?
Wow. You had to end there, didn't you?
Sorry.
Let's say, you know, there's that old saying that the pen is mightier than the sword. And, I mean, we are in some troublesome times. No matter red or blue, black or white, whatever, we are in some times. And I do believe that people who write from the heart, first of all, but also honestly, and as I said earlier, sort of opening their heart and exposing themselves to the truth of who they are, what they've experienced, what their vision of life is, what their hurts are, what their, you know, dream is, what their pain is. I think the more people that do that and are willing to share themselves openly, honestly, and kindly, I think, well, then that's could be our saving grace.
That's great. Kindness is the
Well,
big one, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for now being part of our story
Thank you very much.
today. Thank you all for coming. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
So if anyone is interested, we have books at the table, and Bruce will be there signing, and he'll be happy to chat with you and take pictures and sign your book.